Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Brubaker. I'm here with you today to begin my first video on a new YouTube channel called Variant. And on this channel, I just want to welcome you here. On this channel, I hope to have it be a place where I can put my material and that of others and just talk about things relating to my primary area of research, which is the early Quran manuscripts and specifically corrections and variants that exist within them. And it's been a pretty big week. The reason I'm doing this right now is that I've received a number of requests this week to consider putting some of my material up in bits and pieces, specific examples up online that people can look at, because it is a topic of discussion right now in a way that it has not been in the past. And so I'm happy to do that. I created this channel a little while ago thinking to do something just like this. So it's a great time to actually jump in and begin doing it. I've titled the channel Variant Quran just because that's actually fairly easy to remember and it's most descriptive of what it is that I'm doing. I didn't title it that way to make it sensational or anything, but actually very precisely that is what I'm talking about with my work and my research. So it's not intended to be offensive, but rather very truly descriptive of what it is that I'm working on and focusing my attention upon. Yeah, so this past week or two, there's been discussions around the questions of the traditional views of the preservation of the Quran and the intersection of those with the academic understanding of this, which it shouldn't be that surprising because when you think of manuscripts being transmitted from person to person by people who are human and fallible or who sometimes disagree about things, it wouldn't be a surprise to see the kind of issues that certainly have been studied in the area of biblical manuscripts for several hundred years, New Testament and Hebrew Bible manuscripts, to find those in other books that have been transmitted through such a means. I think the difference is that there has developed over time a sense, mainly in popular at the popular level, that the Quran is different, that the preservation of it was not merely a matter of confidence in the text being as it was delivered, but also almost a doctrinal issue that this text can be trusted because it was transmitted perfectly without a dot or a letter changed and so forth. And in that final phrase that I just said, that is not the view of the earliest, even the earliest Muslim scholars of the matter at hand, but it is the view of many people today. So. Yeah, I don't want to go too much roundabout about this, but I will get into the manuscript in just a moment that I want to show you today. First, I just will give a very brief review of who I am and what it is that I've done. I realize that some people watching this may not know who I am and what I've done. My name is Dr. Daniel Brubaker. I did my doctoral research at Rice University from 2006 to 2014. I defended my doctoral dissertation there in 2014. And in the course of my doctoral work, I settled on a topic, which was the topic of corrections, intentional changes or corrections, physical corrections in early Quran manuscripts. This had captured my interest over, at some point in time. I was interested generally in looking at textual criticism of the Quran. I worked with observing a friend, Keith Small, and others, and just became very interested in this and decided to focus my attention kind of narrowly, but actually also very broadly on many different manuscripts, narrowly on the subject of corrections and broadly by looking at many different manuscripts. So to just cut a very long and interesting story, to me at least, short, I have traveled around the world and looked at these manuscripts in pictures and in books, but also looked at many of them in person, and have traveled all over the world and been shown great courtesy and respect and access to these things in many different institutions, for which I'm very appreciative. They do not let just anybody walk in and look at these things, thankfully, because they're delicate. They're very special and precious. They're 1,300-year-old documents. And in fact, usually even people who are studying manuscripts don't always get a chance to handle them directly. Because my work has been with the specific question of corrections in them that required very close examination of the text, sometimes holding it up to the light and looking at the very fine details of it. I have been given access to a lot. Just blows me away still when I think about it, but that's the story behind that. So the upshot is that there are corrections in early Quran manuscripts. There are a lot of them. Some of them are due to mistakes having been made at the time of first writing. Some of them are due to changes in orthography, the way that the certain words have been written, and so not necessarily a substantive change in the word that would have been pronounced, but a difference in the way the word would have been written. And so over time, sometimes these things were corrected. Sometimes they're due to differences in the readings or the ahruf, which are different things, but and so maybe the manuscript was first written by somebody who was following one particular line, and then was corrected by somebody who was wanting the manuscript to conform to a different reading or something like that. So those kind of things exist as well. But beyond that, there are also a number of corrections and other textual issues, other variations, that don't seem to fit into any of these categories. And those are the ones, obviously, that are the most interesting. Now, I've cast my net fairly wide and have found thousands by now. I have many, many that are sitting in photographs that I have still yet to document and put in, and those will be coming out in forthcoming books, hopefully very soon. Yeah, so the task next at hand is to make sense of these and to evaluate them and sort of sift through the ones that are most potentially significant, most perhaps theologically or doctrinally significant, and begin to look at those more closely. And that's a work not just for me, but for other people to look at as well. Right, so here I am going on and on. So, but I don't want to jump in just yet to the manuscript before saying that I understand that this topic is sensitive. Even when I was the most common question that I had when I was doing my doctoral work was and traveling to countries, not only the UK, Cambridge, Oxford, and these places, British Library and Paris and so forth, but also to some of the countries that are Muslim majority countries. And the question was, is it safe to be doing this kind of research? And in fact, I didn't know. I hoped that it was, and I thought, I'm an honest person doing honest research and not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes or anything like that, which I wasn't. So, and in fact, it turned out that way. But of course, at the time when you're doing something new, and these are questions that are not asked and they're in sensitive areas, we don't know. So I would go on my travels, and I would email my notes back to my wife every night, not knowing what's around the corner. People have very strong feelings about things. So that is sort of part of the glimpse into the adventure that I've been on over these past years. Now, the manuscript I want to show you today, I'm going to step into, and I'm going to transfer over to a slideshow of it in just a moment so you can see it directly. But I wrote a paper on this in 2009, I believe. I presented it at MESA in San Diego, the Middle East Studies Association. And I was looking through it, and I noticed a couple of the corrections on the page, but when I was trying to locate what the text was, what the actual verse was, I came across this issue at the bottom of the page, which you are going to see in a moment. The point that I want to emphasize about that will be clear in a moment, but I just want to also say that the question of how widespread the corrections and what the breadth and depth of the issue of corrections were in manuscripts is something that's relatively new. I don't think anybody has really gauged that before. Even Keith Small, who was a dear friend and who showed me and sort of set me along this track. I don't think he had any real sense or realization of this. People like Keith Small, Francois de Roche, Alba Fideli, and others, many others, actually, well, a number of others. There's a handful of other people doing work today who've been working for, in some cases, for quite some time, done great work. But I don't think anybody had a sense of how wide and deep the matter of corrections really was, because nobody had actually focused attention on that directly before. All right, well, that's enough of that. Thank you for watching this. I hope that you will, if you're interested in this topic and want to hear more, that you will like and subscribe. Please leave comments at the bottom. And I'm going to transfer over now to the other section, which is going to show you what we're looking at. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Okay, so we've transferred over to the slide now. You hopefully can see the screen here. And this manuscript, you can't see the entire thing here, but it is a horizontal page on parchment. It's probably from the 8th century, early 8th century, I would say, within about 100 years of Muhammad's death, possibly earlier than that. And it is one of the pages from the Sana manuscripts that were discovered between the inner and outer dome of the Sana Mosque in Yemen in 1972. I believe this photograph was made by either Puin or von Bothmer, and it was published as part of the UNESCO CD-ROM of Sana Qurans, which I believe was one of the fruits of that project. What you see happening here, and if you look where the arrow is pointing, you can see an inserted aleph in the right margin. This is not all that striking, but I want to show you two corrections on the page before I get to my third issue on the page, which is my main point. This is the final aleph of the word kafaru, they disbelieved, of Surah 974. It represents a not uncommon issue with the developing orthography or way of writing the third-person plural form of verbs. All right, so the second thing I want to show you is this insertion of an Allah that's several lines down. This one has been discussed. It's one of the ones that was discussed in my book, Corrections in Early Quran Manuscripts. It was published about a year ago, among 9 others. And by the way, I have a forthcoming chapter in another book through the Inara series that is discussing more of these corrections involving Allah, 27 corrections and or other insertions of Allah or other corrections involving the word Allah altogether. So it's a more extensive discussion if you found that interesting and want to be on your lookout for more. All right, so this is the final Allah of Surah 978. Again, not all that unusual to see these kind of things. They occur elsewhere, but the main point that I'm making here is this page has been corrected in 2 spots. And so when we come to the last line of the page, this is what the main point that I want to illustrate. We notice that the scribe who first wrote the page actually left out 3 words when it was, if we're comparing it to the text that is now in common use today around the world in the Hafs text and the Cairo edition. So and that all the traditions point back toward. So so this manuscript is variant. Not only was it variant at the time of first writing, but the other interesting thing to note, and the reason I showed you the other 2 corrections on the page, is that somebody came back to this page at a later time after production and corrected it. And whoever that was, however, did not correct or did not see a need to correct the omission at this spot. So I find that very interesting. So these words stand as they were first written. So 2 people, at least, well, possibly one of them, made a mistake by omitting something, or possibly didn't. Possibly thought that that was the way that it was supposed to be written, and possibly the second one, the corrector, either made a mistake and didn't see it, or once again reviewed it and thought that that was the way that it was supposed to be written. So I find that interesting. Now let's take another look before we finish up here at the verse itself and read it there. It says, "It is the same whether or not you beg forgiveness for them. Though you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. That is because they disbelieved in Allah and in His messenger." And that last little bit is cut off, but that's what it says. So this verse can be read sensibly, grammatically correct, with or without the sab'in maratan fa. If you read it without it, it would say, "It is the same whether or not you beg forgiveness for them. Though you ask forgiveness for them, Allah will not forgive them." So that makes sense, but it also makes sense, of course, the way that it stands today. Now, let's take a look over here at something else, which sprung to my mind when I looked at this, and I thought, well, that sounds very familiar. Those themes sound familiar. And if we look at Matthew 18:20 to 21, and some of you may have actually already noticed this as I read the verse. We're reminded of the time when Peter was speaking to Jesus, and the text tells us that Peter came and said to him, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times?" Jesus says to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7." And so what do you notice here? It is the instance of the asking for forgiveness, or the need to forgive, and the requirement or call to do so, up to 70 times 7 in this case. But the 70 times and the idea of forgiveness both exist side by side in this very well-known account, just as they do in the Quran text as it stands today, but not as it stood at the time that this particular manuscript was first written. It lacked that idea of the 70 times. Now, the idea of 70 and the number, the motif of 70 and 7 is very important in the New Testament and in the Hebrew Bible. It's great significance. It occurs very frequently. It's not really that much so in the Quran. It does not occur that frequently in the Quran. So what are we to make of this? What happened here? Well, we don't know. But there are interesting questions in this. I hope that you can notice that and see that. Is it possible that the scribe that first thought that this was not supposed to be here actually was thought that it was not supposed to be here because there was a tradition that varied from what we have today? I don't know if that's the case or not. All we have is a single manuscript here that says it. If we ever have a second manuscript that reads the same way, then we'll be able to have a bit more clarity to the picture. But these are things to think about, and I hope it has started to provoke your thought a little bit. I will end right there and let you think some more. Please, again, like and subscribe to the channel, and leave comments below. I'll take a look at those, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye.